There's a little factoid that's seemed to repeat multiple times on the new SAT. So I want to make sure that you're comfortable with this little factoid because it seems like it's something that they're going to test. And it has to do with trigonometry and complementary angles. So the first thing is to define what a complementary angle is. And a complementary angle is basically two angles, or complementary angles are two angles that add up to 90. So 50 and 40 would be complementary, 32 and 58 would be complementary, and so on. So here's the factoid to remember. When you take the sine of x, the cosine of the complement of that angle, in other words, the cosine of the angle that adds up with the angle to 90, will be the same. And same thing for cosine. If you take the cosine of an angle, then the sine of 90 minus that angle will be the same. So for example, if you have the sine of 30, that's going to equal the cosine of 90 minus 30, in other words, the cosine of 60. If you do the sine of 10, or if you do we'll say the cosine of 10, that's going to be equal to the sine of 90 minus 10, in other words, the sine of 80. So it's just a little fact to remember. So if you know, as we said, that sine of A is 0.23, then cosine of 90 minus A is also 0.23. So here's a question. Given the right triangle above, what is the sine of x minus the cosine of y? So at first, this may seem impossible because we've got no numbers. We have no sides. We've got no angles. How are we supposed to do this? As it turns out, it's our little trick. So notice, if this angle is x, notice y and x are complementary. So what we have here is the sine and the cosine of complementary angles, because you can see y, that's like the same thing essentially as 90 minus x, right? It's whatever's left over for y after we subtract off the x, because these two have got to add up to 90. So if these two are the sine and cosine of complementary angles, then the sine of x equals the cosine of y, as we've discussed above. So that means when we subtract them, it subtracts out to 0. So again, a little factoid to know. I've seen it appear a few times on the test. It seems like they want us to know it. We will see what, if any, other factoids come up. And when we see them, we will add them to our list of information to know. But this is a good place to start.